Hello, 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 and welcome to Coping with Grief and Bereavement During the Holidays. I'm Dr. Carolyn Boston Love of Jacksonville, Florida, and it is indeed my honor and my pleasure to host this very needed gathering. This is going to be an at-home conversation time where like-minded people come together to talk about this journey called grief and bereavement. And how do you cope with it during the holidays? I have asked some of my friends and my family to come and join us tonight. And we hope that together we will bring to you holiday resilience, that you'll be able to have some tools and strategy and a plan to conquer and win during this holiday season. Uh, authors, co-authors of the Against All Odds book with Lisa Nichols. If you don't have your copy, go right there to that center square that says Coping with Grief and Bereavement and order your copy today. There are stories and journeys that's listed in this book that together we've co-authored that will absolutely change your life forever. It will let you know that you are not alone. And our harsh desire is that you will not become lost in the brokenness of life. So many things can happen in the run of a lifetime. But we're here tonight to give you some hope and some help. We're about an hour long, and so this will just be the tip on the iceberg. But you can always call back, reach back, come back, and let us share our journey with you. I'm going to ask each of our panel members if you'll put your contact information in the chat now, so that when they see Dr. Anne Marie, when they see Jerry, when they see Kimberly, when they see Jude. Hi, Christina. How are you? Welcome aboard. Yes, 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 yes. When they see those names, they'll be able to follow back up with you. And we're one voice, one sound, one force, one movement moving others forward. Life is not easy. And during the holidays, days that we're coming up on, we're on the eve of the 2024 holiday season. And you'll find holiday displays everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, all types and expressions of cheer and excitement and celebration, joyous gatherings, invitations to come to this and be a part of that. Lots of fun and lots of excitement. But life during this part of the year and on special days and holidays is not as much fun to some, especially if you're walking through grief and you have a loss that you've encountered and you're just trying to figure out how to navigate through this space and place in life. And so that's why we're here tonight, to help you understand, cope with, deal better with the feelings and the pain and the pressure and the tension and the frustration and the uncertainty during certain holidays. It may not be Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's. It could be a calendar holiday. It's going to be birthdays and anniversary times and certain other holidays and certain other dates that mean a lot to you and will highlight the loss that you have had in your life. So we just want you to know that you're not alone, and please do not become lost in the brokenness as a result of grief. And so when we talk about grief, let me just introduce the panel first and let you greet our audience, and then we're going to define grief. And grief is experiencing the coping of a loss. And there are so many different types of losses that we all have encountered. And hopefully you'll hear something that highlight and put emphasis on the place where you've encountered loss, and that will help you in some type of way tonight. Let's start with Dr. Ann Marie. If you'll introduce yourself, and we'll move from there.
Hi, I am Dr. Anne Marie Wade. I am a women's health nurse practitioner, and I am also a certified health coach. And I am here to share with you my journey and to also support you in this journey that we're gathered here to, kind of like Dr. Love says, just to let you know that you're not alone, that we are here because we know that the holidays create times when if you're going through a loss, that it can be a time when you just need that little extra support. So we're hoping that you can find that support here through us.
Thank you, Dr. Ann Marie.
Hi, my name is Marie McDowell, and I am a certified life coach, and my story is chapter 4 in the book. And yeah, I think this is beautiful that we can all gather here tonight and over the past couple of sessions that you've had to support people that are experiencing all kinds of loss or grief across all different platforms.
Right. Thank you, Ann. Thank you. I'm sorry, Marie. Jude, how are you?
I am well. My name is Jude Monteserato. My chapter is number 2, page 19, titled The Possibility of New Beginnings. I am a health and wellness life coach, a Lisa Nichols transformational trainer. And the title of the chapter, The Possibility of New Beginnings, is so relevant, I feel, for grief and bereavement, because it is a new beginning. And in my chapter, I share the loss of my husband on September 11th, 2001, and how I navigated through that time. And especially during the holidays, it's so imperative to be honest with your feelings. So it's a beautiful platform that Dr. Carolyn Love created to support others during the grief process. So thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Sherry.
It's my turn.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jerry Juhigu. I am a certified grief educator. I am also a certified spiritual psychologist with a master's and advanced degree in spiritual psychology. I like to refer to myself as the good grief expert. Because there are good things on the other side of grief. And I just want to thank Dr. Carolyn Love for inviting me into the space. And hopefully today we can leave some tips as well as support for those that are in need today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Kimberly Lewis, and my chapter in Against All Odds is chapter 16, A Diamond Under Pressure. And in addition to being a nonprofit CEO, I am also a certified life coach as well and consultant. And I'm so excited to be here just to be able to share and to, give some insight into the various kinds of grief that I've experienced and how I have traversed through that journey. And so I hope that everyone who's listening will certainly glean some support and comfort from our words.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Christina.
Hello, Christina Saley, now Nation. I just got married, but in the book, I'm chapter 3, and it's as Christina Saley. So, but I do a couple of things. I work with parents of teens who are struggling with depression. And as you know, depression can be triggered by a great loss and grief, or even just being depressed and grieving that sense of normalcy before such. So holidays can be really difficult for those struggling with depression. I'm also an adult family home provider. So I do work with families in taking care of their aging loved ones. So I am there during that time of loss for that as well. So thank you for having me.
All right, welcome, welcome. We all bring something different to the table, and we honor what you bring, the value and the volume that you bring to this conversation tonight. I think I have everybody. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. And if I did, charge it to my heart and not my head, whichever way that goes. Something, do something with that. Something, something, something. Okay. When we look at this period in time in life, and as we share tonight, please don't only look at grief, resilience for the adults. Please remember that when children and our youth and our teens are in a place, they're in the same family, in the same place, in the community, in the same space. When there's a loss, sometimes we forget about the grief journey that our children, our teens, and our young adults are on. So when we think about grief, it's the experience of coping with loss. There's so many different types of loss. And grief does not only contain itself as to when we lose a loved one, the loss of a loved one. We included last week, someone was with us that was grieving over the loss of a longtime pet. Our fur babies, our extended family members, that's a loss, is a loss. And understanding family members, understanding partners, understanding significant others, understanding children, our siblings, anytime a friend, a loved one, a co-worker, a neighbor, hearing critical losses in our community, there are segments of grief that we encounter that sometimes we don't readily identify it as grief. So tonight, as we look at grief, even in the highlight of the loss of something that you really, really value. You valued a job, a career, financial stability, the grief of not having our health and health care, maybe like we once had it, the grief of a dream or a goal or an adventure loss. It does not always contain itself to the loss of a loved one. Not minimizing it on any end of the spectrum, but grief is grief. And we don't want to forget that there's political grief, there's the election grief, that you just name it, and so many different things are happening in our world and in our nation that can bring grief to our lives. And grieving is a process that we work through when there is something or someone that we have grief over. So I'm sure if we went from block to block and square to square, your grief may be attached to this and mine to that and yours to this and that, but it all ends up, it is grief. And the bereavement portion comes in. It's the grieving period that follows the loss of or the death of. And so you'll hear words: grief, bereavement, mourning, and to understand it better helps us to be able to identify and then reveal where our source of pain, our source of agony. And there are those who, instead of being joyous about the holidays, they're really saying, I'll be just glad when it's over with. I'm not feeling it. I'm not there. I just don't want to go through this without this person, this place, this thing. And so grief is real. And so today we hope that something will be said, something will be addressed that will help us all better understand on the eve of the holiday season that there's hope for the holidays, and that this is not a place where you are alone. There's a multiplicity of men and women and boys and girls who are feeling much of what you feel. But we're here to say that holiday resilience is available for you. And let me just open it up for comments, and then we'll look at the different types of grief. Comments from our panel. Anyone?
Dr. Love, something really struck me when you were talking about don't forget about the children. Many years ago, I was a youth leader at my church, and one of our counselors, we had a family, multiple families that had gone through several deaths in their family in 1 year, and they were just really struggling. And so she asked if I would help her with a grief session, several weeks of grief sessions. And she was going to work with the adults, and I was going to work with the children. The problem is the adults did not want to bring their children because they didn't want to see them in that pain. And I thought that was very interesting. It was like they just needed that time to grieve themselves, and they didn't understand that the children were also grieving. They were just grieving differently. So I had to reach out to the kids individually and send worksheets and different things to them at home, because the parents were like, I just need this quiet time to come and grieve and talk about it. And I don't want to have to answer 500 questions from my kids who also don't understand why mommy and daddy are sad.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Kimberly, for bringing that point out. It's very important that we don't ignore the need to reach out and to talk and to be present and to have conversations. And the conversations may differ totally from the adults to the child, depending on the age and the circumstances, but don't allow them to not be addressed, because it's important that they have support in walking through these times. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I'd also like to say that our children learn how to grieve through our example. And so when we as the parents can, show them that we're going through the process and we're getting the additional support that we need, then that provides, learning for them to be able to handle and cope with the grief as well.
Thank you, Christina. Yes. All right. Someone else. Jude?
I just wanted to add, besides the children, siblings. Siblings seem to be forgotten in the grieving process. I have lost one of my brothers 18 months prior to my husband dying on September 11th. And I realized in time, people were focused on his children, his wife, of course, my mom. But the siblings seem to get pushed aside, not thought of as much in the grieving process. And I noticed it as well with one of my nieces recently passed about almost 2 years ago. And I was talking to my sister, her mom, and mentioning about my nephew, her brother. How is he? I said, everyone's concerned about you, of course, and her family. But what about him? And I feel siblings kind of get pushed aside in the grieving process, not remembered as much because you're worried about the families or the parents or the grandparents and so forth. So I just want to bring that to people's attention, that if you lost a sibling, feel that grief and reach out to people for support.
Thanks, Jude. Very good point. Marie?
Yes, just something that struck me several years ago when I lost my ex was just how we're all coming together to grieve the same person, but a mother is going to grieve differently than a sibling or than their child, or, so yeah, that was just something that really, like, thank you for bringing that up, Jude, because it is, like I said, we can all grieve the same person and yet experience it in different ways. And we might not think to reach out to the sibling, or we might not think to reach out to someone who, isn't the mother or the father or, one of the children. So thank you for that.
Great. Go ahead, Dr. Anne Marie.
I just want to say that a lot of times when somebody is grieving, we tend to think that they should be sad, or why aren't they crying, or why aren't they looking sad, or or whatever. And I just want to emphasize that everybody grieves differently,
Absolutely.
that there's no right way or bad way to feel or act. Some people may cry, some people may come out of feel numb and stay away from people, but there's no right way. And I think it's just for us to acknowledge that they are hurting, and to be a support, be there for them, and to even with, I do agree with, I'm glad that you guys bring up the kids, because a lot of parents don't realize that the kids are grieving too, and it takes somebody to just say to them, how are the children doing, and can we talk to them, or can we just hear how they're feeling. So I just want to clarify that everybody has a different way of grieving.
That's right. And we have to assist with the journey and the process of their grieving, and accept that person for who they are and how their grief journey is. Another person we don't want to forget are the caregivers. Caregivers begin grieving long before the actual passing away or the loss. When you're caring for a loved one, you're caring as a professional in the workplace, in the time that you spend with families and patients, and anybody working bedside, whether it's your loved one or it's your profession. There's a certain level of grief you encounter. And so this is very healthy and helpful to caregivers who have given. And sometimes that journey forward, you have not taken the time as a caregiver for the time and the space that you need to heal or to accept what is taking place. And so as we deal with grief, Jerry, go ahead if you want to share something. Don't want to forget you.
I can share. You mentioned caregivers. I just want to mention that I recently went to South Carolina to support a caregiver in South Carolina through my nonprofit, the CareBox Network. And the other thing is the secondary loss, right? We have the primary loss, which is the death of a person, and or the anticipatory grief in losing a person. But the secondary losses attached to holidays include, like, that caregiver is not going to have her traditional holiday. She's in a one-room hospice situation living with her mother because of the hurricane. And so, throughout these holidays, some people are having secondary losses that are piled onto their primary loss. And those secondary losses include traditions that they used to do, places they used to go, people they used to see that they're no longer going to see as a result of their loss. So it's okay to cancel the holiday if someone needs to cancel the holiday. In addition to that, we can remember that Thanksgiving, which is 2 or 3 days away from now, is actually a man-made holiday. And, and we're celebrating the taking of land from Native Americans. So if you want to cancel it, it's quite all right. Because a lot of times we feel obligated to participate in a holiday due to the way we were raised or tradition, but sometimes we are not in the space based on whether or not we're in early grief, which I happen to actually still be in, because early grief is the first 2 years of losing someone, that you may not feel in that space of being grateful and thankful in the moment when you're, enjoying the holiday or trying to enjoy the holiday or survive the holiday in some cases. So I just wanted to offer to people that no is a complete sentence. And that if they are not up for being in groups or crowds, that it is okay to be with themselves and be in an honoring space that works for them.
Thanks, Jerry. That's great. And then your no may mean no, we need to make some changes.
Yeah.
We're in a change situation that this is a new normal. And no, Papa's not here to carve the turkey or to bake the ham or to do whatever. Maybe the time to start a new tradition and move to something forward and begin to think forward. So you have to go with where you are and what you feel, because there's normal grief. That's when you've lost a loved one or you've lost a situation. And then, as Jerry mentioned, it's anticipatory grief, when you are watching a steady decline of a loved one or a family member or co-worker or a situation or circumstances, and you begin to grieve before the loss. That's very normal. That's very natural, because you anticipate what is to come and you're expecting the loss. And so you are sort of bracing yourself even before it happens. And then there's another type of grief called complicated grief. And it occurs when the grieving process does not move all the way through the steps of grief. There's no quick fix. There's no instant. There's no sudden. There are steps of grief, and that there are processes that you have to walk through in order to make it through this journey of grief. There's chronic grief, and that's when they're in extreme, intense reactions to the loss due to the situation, due to the circumstances, person, the place, the thing. There are a whole lot of things that add to this component called grief. And then there's delayed grief. You had it and you didn't fully experience it, and then after a while it came back. Delayed grief is a part of moving through the process. And there's distorted grief. There's so much, in 1 hour we cannot possibly thoroughly explain, but this is at least to give you an idea that what you're feeling is real. Where you are is very real. And then there's cumulative grief. You've got one grief on top of another, and you have not come through one situation before you've added, and it's compounded. Then, as Jerry mentioned, the secondary loss. There are more than one loss that's going on, and one loss is engaged in the loss of something else and the loss of something else. And it's so easy to mask grief when you don't identify it. And you can't heal from a place that you won't reveal where it really is located and what it is. And sometimes it's hard for you to figure it out by yourself. That's why you have therapists. That's why you have life coaches. That's why you have men and women who are trained to not just tell you it'll be over in 2 weeks. No, it will not be over. And we spent a few moments in our last Tuesday session talking about even preparing yourself for the crazy advice people will give you when you are walking through such a tender moment in your life. Some of the things that really doesn't make sense when they say it, but they say it because they feel like they have to say something. You need to understand grief for yourself. Disenfranchised grief, whenever you feel a loss, but it's not validated or recognized or acknowledged by others. And some feel like, oh, you shouldn't be grieving over that. That was an ex, or that was somebody, that was just a classmate. Don't let yourself underestimate the level of grief that you're experiencing because someone else does not put a value on that loss that you are encountering. Sometimes society don't give space to where your loss is. You have to take that space and own that space and make that space meaningful so that you can heal from it. Someone say, well, that was just a car. That was just a job. That was just a career. You could always replace that. That does not take the pain away. That does not take the loss away. Oh, you could always get another house. You could, but right now I'm where I've encountered the loss, and that's painful to me. So don't ever let anybody undervalue what is painful to you. Please work through it. There's traumatic grief. There's collective grief. There's some griefs that happen in communities that affect the entire community. And so it's not just one household, but when the cumulative collective effort and it's community wide, everybody's hurting. So you've got to find your place of getting the help that you need. There's so many kinds of grief. But they're all painful, and you do need help in those areas. I'll go to the panel. Are there other types of grief that you want to bring up, just to make sure that we identify those areas of pain?
Dr. Love, I don't have a type of grief, but when you were talking about, the things that people say to you, my brother was killed in a car accident. He was actually hit by a truck. And people felt like it was appropriate to clip out the newspaper article and send to my parents as if we didn't know what happened. And I was thinking about it a few nights ago. It baffled me. And I was like, why? I mean, we already know it's real, we know what happened. We were there. We have the coroner's report, we know what happened. But, just, be mindful. And in this social media time, you see it all the time that folks are so quick to announce the death of someone before the family has even found out about it. Yes. Or before they have processed it. They put it all over Facebook, that so-and-so and so is gone, and speculation of what happened and all of those kinds of things. And that just exasperates that feeling of grief, because then anger, and dismay also, then are coupled, because, you have the shock of trying to deal with folks who obviously don't know any better or won't act as though they know any better, who are intruding on your grief. So, how do you, and I'm asking some of our wonderful panelists, how do you cope with those kinds of things?
Before we move on, I just want to bring up one, because I just thought of one other type of grief that a lot of people are going through, is a loss of health. There's so many people who were healthy and vibrant lives, and then they, come down with some, and then and that's a grieving process as well.
So important. Yes. Okay. All right, Jerry.
When Dr. Anne Marie said that, it made me think of ambiguous grief. Where there is grief where it's not clearly defined what has happened to a person, whether a person, died in a fire or is missing. It reminds me of that because I had a friend who had a aunt that was missing for about 4 months, and we had no idea what she was. And we had no idea whether or not she was alive or dead. Thank God we wound up finding her because she had a severe mental illness.
Okay.
And the other thing that struck me was when Kimberly was saying, like, how do you deal with when people want to broadcast what happened
Mm-hmm.
to a loved one? I often think of how what someone else is doing and how they're processing a death, a grief, your reaction to what's happening to you. We have to some degree, disassociate ourselves from that so that it does not attach to what we're experiencing. And so, like, even during the holidays, I like to offer to people that even if, you know, like people like to say, what are you going to do for Thanksgiving? Right. And they say, you know, they feel like you should be doing something with them
Mm-hmm.
or with someone, and they give you this pity face and this I feel sorry for you. And you can opt to say, I am opting out. I am going to be with friends. I'm going to do an intimate whatever, because that intimate whatever can be you by yourself
Right.
with your own dinner at the steakhouse if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because people really don't know how to often, because we have not trained our society in America how to manage our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So people assume what they should be doing when someone else is in grief. They assume that you need to not be in denial of what happened, that you need clarity in what happened, when your family has all the clarity they need,
Mm-hmm.
right? No one knows better what to do in your situation than you in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I offer to Kimberly and anyone else that's experiencing the people that want to offer advice, knowing that they need grace to deal with it how they need to deal with it, because they're projecting onto you, right? They're projecting their need to solve a problem onto you. They don't understand that your emotions and your grief cannot be solved by what they're offering, but it can be supported if they would just listen to what you need.
Good point. It can be supported. Sometimes the folk don't understand that just the gift of presence
Yes.
you can offer some folk, wherein gift of presence, you don't have to have a 2-hour conversation. Depending on where you are in the stages of grief, you may not be at a place where you can keep repeating, well, what happened? If you ask me that one more time, I'm just gonna lose it. I mean, it's just, it becomes too much. And understanding that there are different types of griefs, but there are also different stages of grief. And when we understand the stages and the phases and how they vacillate from one to another, and then you can be at this level and something or situation happen and you fall back into a stage and a place, that's life, that's grieving, and you constantly work with the process. Just the basic stages of grief is, number one, denial. It is difficult to believe the loss of the loss. It is just mind-blowing to believe it. You know, you go back and you say, I can't believe such and such has happened. I can't believe this person is gone. I can't believe how it happened. So you go through that denial state. That's a stage of grief. And then a part of grief, very important stage, is anger. You will feel anger. Some anger makes sense, some do not make sense, some is relatable, and some is compounded. You're angry at situations and circumstances, and you're angry that that loved one left you behind. You're angry that I didn't have enough notice, I didn't have enough time. I'm angry at the I didn't have a solution. Anger is a part of getting through the grieving process. And I'm not saying live in anger, but work through it. Find out, work with, why am I so angry? And sometimes you can be angry at yourself, angry at the circumstances, whatever, but denial and anger are part of the stages of grief. And then there comes that stage of bargaining. What could I have done more? Should I have called again? Should I have done this? What could I have done? I should have taken the place. A whole lot will come and play in your mind and in your path to make you bargain. What could I have done? Could I have done more of this? Could I have done less of this? Could I have said this? Should I have moved earlier? Did I move too slow? The bargaining, that's a part of you moving through the grieving process. You're just trying to figure out, how could I have avoided this from happening? And much of what we are bargaining with is so far out of our realm and our scope of changing things. But bargaining is one of the stages of grief. And then there's depression. Don't leave that out. Depression, of the heaviness, the oppression, the weightiness, the weight of the emotions and the range of emotions and the ups and the downs and the mental weight of the loss. So for someone to tell you, well, it's the holidays, just choose to be happy. I'm doing the best that I can with what I've got to work with. Just decide that this is not your final spot, but I am working through, I'm moving through, I'm matriculating through the stages of grief. And then acceptance. Eventually, maybe not now, not at the time that it happened, maybe a year, 2 years later on, as time moves on, you accept what has happened and you begin to regain strength in that area. I know I've lost and buried a child. I've lost and buried a sibling. I've lost and buried a mother-in-law. And then within 7 months, both of my parents. So loss is not anything foreign to me, but none of them have been comfortable and easily acceptable. And my training and my background and my expertise is in end-of-life care, working with hospice patients and working with patients and families and dealing with grief on day-to-day basis and watching the decline and watching the exit and watching the process. And so I've seen myself, and it helped me to understand better how I shut down for 18 months after our daughter passed. I didn't have this kind of help. I didn't have this kind of support. I blamed myself that, well, you can pray for everybody else's child and you can pray for everybody else and their lives just change and they move on and you don't need to pray anymore because you're at a point of failure. And how many months I sat by that grave and just watched the grave and tormented myself. But that was my process. I know better now, but I didn't have that some years back. And I promise you, what I put myself through, I do not wish that on anybody else when I know that there's help so that you won't get lost in the brokenness. And this even impeded my involvement and my engagement in church. I lost it. I lost it. And I'm not ashamed to share it with folk because when you're going through the stages of grief and working with real life in real time, you don't always know the solution. So we hope that where we are tonight, that we are at least touching the surface, and you have our contacts, please, please let us help you. Make sure you get your copy of the book, because there are stories, they're actually like prescriptions to the situations and the circumstances of life that will help you through. Let me go back to the panel, see if you have comments. Oh, all the hands up. All right, pop like popcorn. Go, go, go.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to share that, you know, you had mentioned before, I believe, Dr. Love, that, you know, our loss may not even be somebody, you know, it may not be something that ends in the graveyard. You know, for me on my journey, it's been like alcoholism and addiction has touched my life. And so sometimes we're grieving family members that are still alive, you know, because maybe they're out on the streets, or maybe we're the ones out on the streets, you know, and we're grieving the loss of our families. Or, you know, I've seen too where people get clean and sober, but they've done so much damage in their families that there's still no reparation, you know, there's still no reconnection. And so, and it's interesting that Thanksgiving is coming up right now. Like, I spent my teen years as a runaway, like that's part of the story in the book. And I spent a Thanksgiving sitting on this stairwell landing, like next to a radiator that didn't work, you know, and like some people took me into their home and gave me Thanksgiving dinner, you know. And so just, you know, as you were sharing, you didn't have the tools that you have today, you know, and so it took me a long time to gain the tools that I needed to heal, and that I needed to go back and see, you know, I was grieving the loss of my innocence, you know, the loss of my kind of my childhood to some extent. I mean, I was already a teenager, but and there had to be a lot of healing inside of me that took place before I could go and heal things with my family, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
Thank you, Marie. All right, next.
I just want to say that I love that, first of all, in the beginning, that you brought up the part about caregivers, because a lot of time those very people are forgotten in the grieving process. But I also want to add that, like you said, it's a process. It's not a time frame. The grieving process has certain stages that you go through, and there's nothing that says you first have to be angry and then you have to, you know, go to you can go back and forth. You can have total acceptance and go right back to feeling angry again. So there is no specific step that you take your grieving process through. It's just you have to be patient with yourself. You have to give yourself the time and acknowledge your feelings. If you don't deny them, just be one with them. Acknowledge that you're feeling angry, acknowledge that you're feeling sad, and just be with them. But what I want to say is that we also need to reach out to others. If our grief is overwhelming, then maybe we do need to get some therapy. And it could be because grief can be very isolating. When you're grieving, you feel like you're the only person, that nobody else knows what you're feeling. And so it becomes very isolating. And I think when you start feeling that, that's kind of a cue for you to reach out to others, because it may be just a friend, it may be even a community. And it's a lot of times that's when our faith, you know, we can reach out to our like-minded people and join a group, a support group. But there is so much involved in the process, and I want us to recognize that it's not a set thing. You know, you said, but I already went through that phase, why am I still feeling that way? There's no set way that you go through it, and there's no set time. So don't say it's been 2 years, why am I still sad? It's because you're still working through some things.
Thank you, Dr. Anne Marie. All right, who's next?
I was going to say something similar to what Dr. Amory shared about the stages. It isn't consecutively that you go through it and you're done and it's all good. It's bouncing back and forth, and there is no time frame. at all. And because of September 11th, the way John died, it is a event every year that is broadcasted. So there's that when someone dies traumatically, and how that could bring up the constant feelings of depression or denial. And the other point I wanted to touch on, because there's so much involved with grief that I wasn't aware of. And I think that's where people say things that they don't even realize they're saying, right? Kimberly, we've all experienced that. And it's a topic, I believe Jerry said it, that we're not taught about. We're not, there's no space to talk about it and what to do about it. I mentioned it on the last call. It's somebody dies. I know my dad died when I was 28. I took off the week, had the funeral with my family and my mom, went back to work, and life just continued that way. And that was just packed away until after John died, and all of these different feelings and processing of people that died previously, I had to go through. So it's just a subject that I feel is so crucial to create space, safe space for people to be in. So thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jude. This is great conversation, great conversation. Anyone else?
I would like to jump in and just say I'm so grateful for this series and these conversations. It has been food for my soul, just learning about all of the different types of griefs and how we can support each other as well as other people that's in a community, because you don't know what you don't know. And I am experiencing an array of emotions as I am going through this. And Sunday, I was at an old church and they were acknowledging two young people who had lost their lives due to gun violence. And the family and the friends were invited to come to church. And so this young man, it had to be about 50 people deep that came in support of this young man. And I just thought, and so the church kind of rallied around them and in support of them. And I was so in awe of the support for these two young men. I wasn't even thinking about myself. And the pastor was like, and Obiama just lost, her husband, and you come on up as well. And I think the most important thing is that we need to stay in community when we're grieving, and we need to stay in a community that is nurturing and loving and supportive, so that even when we don't feel alone, we're never alone. And even when we feel alone, we're not alone. And so you spoke about the presence, just being a presence. And so sometimes not saying anything is as powerful as saying something. So I love all of this. And then the other thing that was said about the support of the children and how children learn to grieve based on how you grieve. And I have to tell you guys, my 20-year-old, I knew that he was going to take it really, really hard because he was so close to his father. And my 23-year-old is just a champion of resiliency, and he's strong. And my mom is like, you need to check on him because he needs to cry. You need to make sure that he cries, because for my mom, she lost three brothers back to back, maybe 6 months to a year, back to back. And so my one uncle died, and he was sick, sort of, kind of. His death, his transition was kind of crazy. But then the other brother died unexpectedly, just, natural causes. But then the third brother that died was like the good brother. He was like the good brother. He was the one that, no, not him. Like the other two lived, a life that was questionable, and it was just, oh, we're gonna miss them. But when the third one passed away, it was just like, not this one. And so my mom feel as though he passed away because he never grieved the other two brothers. And so the inside, she said, he kept it in. He was so strong, he kept it in. And the death of the other two brothers killed him.
Mm.
And I just was like, wow. So she was really on me about making sure that my son shared tears. She said, he needs to cry. He needs to cry. Make sure he cries. He cannot hold it in. So, this conversation is just really interesting, because how she processed her brother's, transition, and how me and my children are processing. I'm like, he's good. I don't think that he necessarily needs to cry. My concern for my son was that he really wasn't good with his father. He wasn't on good terms with his father. So my support for him was, are you good? How do you feel? Because I don't want you to have regrets because you guys weren't on good terms. And he said, Mom, I'm good, because over the last 6 months, I had started reaching out to him. I had started having conversations with him, right? And so he was at his bedside, and he was the one that made the decision to take him off of the respirator. So it was very beautiful to see the 23-year-old and the 12-year-old stand by their father bedside and make that decision and support and that transition. And it gave me strength. It empowered me. So while we need to be conscious of the children can also give us a strength that we don't even know that we need. And hearing my 12-year-old, ladies, my 12-year-old, as his father was transitioning, begin to sing this song, I sought the Lord, and he heard and he answered. And he just sung that song as his father was transitioning. I sought the Lord, and he heard and he answered. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And however we, grieve, it's our process, and just being supportive. So I'm grateful of this conversation and this panel. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Obiama, for being with us tonight, and even participating with the situation and the circumstances at hand. And a part of voices and volumes in this hour, we've got to educate our communities and re-prepare society for parts of life that no one wants to have the conversation. There are some conversations that are hard to have, and that doesn't mean that we get a hall pass to not have those, but there has to be safe places and teachable moments and educational moments where we train that this is a part of life. We have no problems having the gender reveal and the baby showers and all the beginning of life things, but the end of life is a part of life. And until someone help us to better understand that and relate to it, it will always be a place that, let's not talk about this. some things we have to have those hard conversations. So thank you for being a part of this conversation tonight. And hopefully that as folk are able to tune in again and again on YouTube to these 3 conversations that we've had, that they will glean some sources of a breath of fresh air, just a sigh of relief, just understanding, boy, I was thinking something was wrong with me, but there are stages and phases and different types that I was just unaware of. I know that you're helping somebody even right now because you are here. Our time has come and it has gone. Thank you, those persons on the panel. Thank you for those who are in our listening audience. Right there on the screen in the chat, you've got the contacts. Contact us. Do not put it off. You know what you need better than anybody else. And we're here not just as a conversation. Thank you for putting my information in the group. But we're here because you need a skilled voice in your life when you're going through changes like you are encountering, and that you share this with someone else. And I do wish for you the greatest holiday season ever. And if that is not possible right now, let's work on it so that the next holiday season coming up, you can cope better with the holidays. Resilience for the holidays is our purpose for being here. And thank you so much to each one of you. Those of you in our listening audience, mwah, you're in the right place at the right time with the right group of people for the right information for this moment and hour that we're all in. God bless you. God keep you. And may heaven smile upon you. Until the next time, be listening. We'll be back with more information to educate our community. God bless you. Have a good rest of the night. Thank you, thank you, thank you.